Her pen moved like it always had, confident, final. But someone else had rewritten the rules. She signed the divorce papers like she was giving an autograph. One fluid motion, practiced, detached. I remember thinking how strange it was, the same hand that used to tuck notes into my lunchbox, now sealing the end of a life we'd built together with a flick of ink. No hesitation. No glance backward. She didn't even read the fine print. Just leaned forward in her cream blazer, clicked her pen, and signed. As if the weight of everything, years, promises, breakdowns disguised as renovations, could be flattened onto 2 sheets of premium stock paper. Across the table, her lawyer smiled. It was subtle. Too subtle for her to notice, perhaps. But I did. The kind of smile you save for checkmate. That's when I knew she didn't understand what she'd done. Not really. To her, this was freedom. A release. A rebranding. She had already begun using her maiden name again in emails. Booked a solo trip to Greece. Joined a yoga studio she used to mock. She thought she was walking into light. She didn't see the shadows behind her, the ones she cast herself. She thought signing meant she had one. But sometimes, the winner is just the first one to fall. I looked down at her signature, bold, curling, confident. The same way she used to write, "I love you" on birthday cards. Same flourish. Same pressure. Only this time, it wasn't love that inked the page. It was delusion. You could almost hear it in the silence that followed, the faint echo of a trapdoor closing. She got up quickly, like she couldn't wait to leave. Didn't even take her copy of the papers. Her heels clicked like punctuation across the hardwood, echoing off the marble of the courthouse hallway. Final. Cold. What she didn't realize, not then, was that the signature wasn't the end. It was her first move. But I had already shifted the board. The house, the accounts, even the lawyer she assumed was only bluffing, none of it happened by accident. She'd been so focused on getting away from me, she didn't see what she was running toward. That's the thing about endings, they don't announce themselves with fireworks. They wait. Quietly. Patiently. And then they sign your name for you. Her card declined at the cafe. Then at the gas station. Then at the bank. She laughed until she didn't. It started with a latte. Oat milk, cinnamon dusted, $5 and change. She smiled at the barista like always, a charming, confident, rehearsed, but the card reader blinked red. Declined. She laughed almost on instinct. Oh, weird. I must have used the wrong one. She pulled out another, the gold one. The one she never let me touch. Declined. A flicker. Barely a beat skipped. But the barista was watching now, eyes flicking between the screen and her smile like they didn't believe either. By the 3rd attempt, she was no longer laughing. By the time she made it to the gas station, she was speaking to the machine like it was malfunctioning, as if maybe her reality would glitch back into place if she tapped hard enough. But there's a stillness in that moment, a kind of quiet verdict, when plastic becomes worthless in your hand. By the time she reached the bank, she wasn't smiling anymore. The manager met her at the desk with a polite tone and a rehearsed apology. Legal review. Asset protection hold. A case file already in motion. She asked to withdraw cash. He said she couldn't. Not until it cleared. Cleared? She'd never felt so publicly invisible. A woman dressed like money, treated like an error code. And then came the real blow. A letter slid across the glass desk like a guillotine in slow motion. My lawyer's letterhead. Come words with sharp edges. Her prenup had been challenged. Not for what it said, but for how it was signed. Inconsistent with verified handwriting samples, the letter read. Fraud. A technicality, maybe. But sometimes the smallest crack brings down the whole facade. She remembered signing it vaguely. At a wine bar. With a friend. She'd bragged later that she barely even read it. Said she wouldn't let a few legal lines tell her what she was entitled to. Now those lines were all that stood between her and an empty ledger. The apartment fund? Frozen. Her investment account? Flagged for review. Even the savings account she thought I didn't know about, the one she quietly funneled bonuses into, sealed under marital asset law. She tried calling her lawyer. Straight to voicemail. She tried texting mine. He answered with paperwork. She used to accuse me of being cold. But cold isn't silence. Cold is precision. You built your world alone, remember? My attorney had said as he handed her the file. We're just letting you keep it. Her signature had always been her sword. But today it cut her hand. She thought the worst had happened until her own bloodline cut her loose. She wore black. Not for mourning. Not even for power. Just for control. It was the kind of outfit meant to disarm boardrooms. Sharp lines, flawless tailoring, posture carved from glass. She walked into her father's office like it still belonged to her. Like the weight of her maiden name was enough to tip the scale back in her favor. She didn't come for comfort, not even for advice. She came for leverage. What she found instead was silence. He didn't stand, didn't greet her, just looked up from his chair with eyes that once taught her how to read people. Now they looked through her. "You made your choices," he said. "I made mine." She opened her mouth to explain, to redirect, maybe to manipulate, but he was already reaching into the drawer. A folder landed on the desk. Not thick, just damning. Photos. Printed, not digital. Old-fashioned shame. One showed her in a hotel lobby, smiling at someone who wasn't her husband. Another, laughing at a dinner table, fingers laced with a man whose face she couldn't deny. A third, blurry, but undeniable, her car parked outside the same address. Night after night, she reached for them. He didn't let her. "You embarrassed the family," he said, as if he were diagnosing a disease. Not anger, not heartbreak, just audit. Her betrayal hadn't wounded him, it had disqualified her. She thought there might be some room for nuance, some moment where she could rewrite the story as a lapse in judgment, a search for self. She had told herself for weeks that what she did in private had no bearing on the empire her father built. But legacy doesn't care about nuance, cares about optics. When she left that office, her corporate email no longer existed. The badge she wore like armor? Deactivated. The corner office with the skyline view? Already reassigned. The driver who usually opened her door didn't make eye contact. By the time she reached the parking garage, her pass beeped red. Not invalid, unauthorized. She hadn't been betrayed. She'd been erased. And it wasn't personal. That's what stung the most. He hadn't punished her. He'd simply accepted what she showed him and adjusted accordingly. Legacy moves on, even when you don't. When the scandal broke, he vanished faster than her net worth. She woke to silence. Not the kind that invites peace, the kind that rots. The kind that feels like someone hit mute on your life without warning. She reached for her phone like a reflex, expecting a message. Maybe something sweet, maybe something reckless. Instead, there was nothing. No unread texts, no new notifications, no missed calls. She checked again, then again. Habit is stubborn like that. Still nothing. The man who had once sent her midnight confessions and morning promises, "Soon, it'll be just us," had disappeared. She tried calling. Straight to voicemail. She texted. Blue turned to green. Then she searched his name on social media. Gone. No photos, no bios, no clever captions, no trace of the life he once dangled in front of her like a golden rope ladder. He didn't leave. He erased. The scandal broke the night before. A quiet leak turned wildfire. Someone whispered. The press listened. And now her name trended for all the wrong reasons. It wasn't even about love anymore. It was about headlines. Her affair had gone from personal failure to public record. And just like that, her lover became allergic to consequences. She tried to rationalize it. Told herself he must be scared, overwhelmed, protecting them both. But the truth was simpler. He had always loved the story more than the woman. Escape plans, rooftop fantasies, talk of Tuscany and hidden lives. None of it real, just placeholders. Warm delusions. She wasn't heartbroken. She'd given up on romance before the ink dried. What she felt now was far worse. Humiliation. Because it wasn't love she lost. It was leverage. He hadn't wanted her. He wanted the fantasy of someone powerful, untouchable. A woman who wore secrets like silk. Now she was neither. He left faster than her assets. Quicker than her father's silence. More surgically than any divorce. It wasn't personal. That was the cruelty of it. She wasn't mourned, just avoided. It took her hours to stop refreshing the screen. Days to admit what she already knew. Ghosts don't say goodbye. They vanish, because they never planned to stay. She sold her memories like junk, piece by piece, pretending it wasn't survival. The first to go was the watch. Cartier, gold. A gift he gave her after her first big pitch, back when she still believed success was a form of love. Back when they still celebrated each other's victories instead of counting them. She told herself it didn't matter. It was just a thing. But she wore it on the way there. Just one last time. The pawn shop smelled like metal and defeat. Behind the glass counter, her life was reduced to wait and resale. The clerk didn't ask questions. Just squinted at the watch, flipped it, tapped something into a keyboard. His silence was worse than pity, it was process. She nodded at the number. Too low, but what choice did she have? Next came the brooch. Her grandmother's. Silver with delicate vines etched along the edges. She'd worn it on her wedding day, pinned near her heart. Said it would keep the women before her clothes. She almost didn't part with it. Almost. But nostalgia doesn't pay balances. Then the sapphire earrings, the ones she wore the night he proposed. He said they matched her eyes. She had never checked. Gone. The money was gone just as fast, swallowed by overdue fees, frozen cards, debts she'd once called temporary. She walked out of the shop lighter, but not freer. Just hollow. Like a room emptied of furniture, but still carrying the shape of the life that used to live inside it. She used to mock his obsession with planning, the folders, the budgets, the dry conversations about asset protection. She'd roll her eyes and tell him he didn't know how to live. Now, she stood at a bus stop holding a receipt for a watch she no longer owned. And she would have given anything for one of those dry conversations. The vultures weren't circling anymore. They were landing. She used to wear silk. Now she stood in polyester asking for mercy. The coat itched. Not from the fabric, not really, but from what it represented. Polyester, stiff and synthetic, clung to her like a memory she couldn't wash off. It was the kind of coat you buy when you stop thinking about style and start thinking about price tags. She used to wear silk. French cuts. Italian tailoring. Now her outfit made a sound when she moved, a quiet rustle of compromise. She waited in the lobby longer than she'd expected. The receptionist, new, young, asked her name twice. Then offered water once she realized who she was. Not out of respect. Out of pity. She declined. Her stomach was a knot. He finally came into view. Her husband, ex-husband, technically walked toward her in silence, his expression unreadable. Not cold. Not cruel. Just measured. Like a man who no longer made space in his mind for questions he had already answered. She stood, but her knees hesitated. "I'm not here to fight," she said. Her voice felt too loud in the quiet lobby. I need help. Not money. Not revenge. Just time. A name. A lawyer who wouldn't treat her like a tabloid headline. A way to stop the walls from closing in." He didn't speak right away. Just looked at her, and she couldn't tell if he saw the woman he used to love or just the wreckage of what she'd become. Then he handed her a folder. Thin. Clean. Precise. Inside were pages she couldn't quite focus on, line items, contracts, clauses, dates she didn't remember signing, and debts she didn't know had her name attached. All legally binding. All traceable. Her hands trembled. Not from cold, from recognition. This wasn't vengeance. It was structure. This was what it looked like when someone prepared for a storm you never thought would come. And suddenly, the thing that hurt the most wasn't the debt. It wasn't even his refusal to help. It was the precision of it. The fact that he had anticipated this, not hoped for it, but built around it. She wasn't being punished. She was being accounted for. And now every choice, every joke at his expense, every eye roll at his spreadsheets had led her here. Wearing a cheap coat. Asking for mercy. Receiving math. He didn't slam the door. He didn't shout. He just walked away and took everything with him. There was no fight. No yelling. No accusations thrown across a kitchen counter. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't raise anything. Just his eyes. "All you had is mine now," he said, voice quiet as snowfall. "You insisted I stay out of your business. So I did. And I documented everything." She had always mistaken silence for surrender. Now she saw it for what it was, strategy. He didn't need rage. He didn't even need to win. He just needed proof. And he had it. Every transaction, every redirection of funds, every late-night withdrawal. Her shell companies. Her secret accounts. The condo lease she opened under her cousin's name. She thought she was clever. He was just patient. In the end, it hadn't been a war. It had been an audit. And she had failed. He didn't gloat. He didn't smile. He didn't twist the knife. That would have been easier to hate. Instead, he weaponized restraint. The room around them, once theirs, now his, didn't feel like home anymore. Just a scene. A final move. This wasn't revenge. It was preparation. And the difference, she realized, is everything. Revenge is messy. Emotional. Loud. Preparation is elegant, clean, legal. He walked toward the door without urgency, without drama. And as he stepped out, he took nothing physical with him, no boxes, no furniture. But somehow everything she ever relied on went with him. Her stability, her reputation, even her sense of reality. He didn't have to take anything, because she had already given it all away. The door clicked softly behind him, and that was checkmate, not in force, but in foresight. She stared at her own reflection and saw a woman who had no enemies, only consequences. The mirror didn't lie. That was the problem. She used to see a survivor, the kind of woman who could walk away from ashes and still smell like perfume, the kind who smiled through ruin, who could charm her way into any room and rewrite any ending. But today she saw the flaw in the glass. Or maybe it was in her. There was no blood, no bruises, nothing dramatic to dress her failure. Just her, still wearing the same coat, still holding on to a posture that no longer belonged to her. Not powerful, not pitiful, just unmasked. She leaned closer, looking for someone she could explain this to. But mirrors don't negotiate. They just echo. She hadn't lost a war. She'd never understood the game. All those years of framing herself as a phoenix, rising, reclaiming, outlasting. It was fiction. A role she'd cast herself in to avoid asking the one question she'd buried deepest. What if the villain in the story never noticed the mirror was the stage? He hadn't ruined her. He hadn't even stopped her. He'd outgrown her. That was the wound. Not the silence, not the loss, but the realization that while she had been performing survival, he had been building it. And by the time she looked up, the theater was empty, the audience gone, the lights off. She thought she had enemies. She didn't. Just consequences. They don't shout. They reflect. No calls, no messages, just silence, and the hum of a life being dismantled. There's a sound to falling, but it's not what she expected. No crash, no scream, no cinematic unraveling, just silence, and the faint hum of fluorescent lights, and the dull click of an unplugged phone line. She kept checking her inbox like muscle memory. Still empty. No updates, no apologies, no invitations. The news cycle had already moved on. So had the lawyers. So had the people who used to nod when they said her name. Now they paused, whispered, avoided. Her reputation had become the kind of story people muttered over wine. Whatever happened to her? I heard she lost everything. Shame, really. She used to be brilliant. The people who once competed for her attention no longer remembered why they ever needed it. That was the real silence. Not the lack of noise, but the absence of gravity. She was still standing, still breathing, still dressed in the illusion of relevance. But something essential had gone quiet. She didn't answer questions anymore, mostly because no one asked, but also because she had none. No narrative left to spin, no chessboard left to rearrange. Just fragments, just echoes. She used to believe silence was peace. Now she understood it differently. Silence isn't the absence of sound. It's the presence of judgment. It lingers. It waits. It doesn't accuse, it just watches. And every hour of it felt like a verdict. One she could no longer appeal. She thought she was leaving him. But he had already left her. A long time ago. It didn't end in court, or on paper, or in some explosive final confrontation. It ended in the smallest way. A pause. A stillness. A moment where she stopped pretending to win. She didn't stop fighting because she lost. She stopped because she saw the board clearly for the first time. He hadn't ruined her. He hadn't even touched her. He'd simply watched, quietly, while she bet everything on emotion. She had always believed power was loud. That strength was visible. That strategy was something performed. But he had been building his escape silently, one document at a time, one clause at a time, one detachment at a time. While she stormed, he prepared. And when the roof caved in, he didn't have to run. He was already on the outside. She thought she had left him, but he had been gone long before she packed her pride and walked out the door. She used to call herself the architect of her life. Ambitious, independent, unstoppable. But now she saw the truth. She'd drawn the sketches, but he built the exits. Legally, logically, entirely. No hatred, no vengeance, just clean lines and final steps. He hadn't broken her. He'd outplayed her. And in the end, she wasn't even angry, just still, finally still, because the loudest lesson is the one that doesn't need to be spoken. And this was silence that echoed.